good evening, and tonight is our last night of fundraising for this spring, and we had a great turnout, a lot of people reaching out to help us, so we would like to thank you that we were able to raise just over $10,000 to go towards fixing our roof, and that really means a great deal to us. So before I fade into the background of just asking questions again, I of course am going to give you a few more pitches. Please stay in touch. Feel free to reach out to us at any time if you're interested in being on our mailing list, which would give you more updates on some of what we're doing at the monastery and the events and retreats we're offering. Please feel free to contact us through the website. I wanted to bring out Sokuzan's meditation primer again just one more time. I'd forgotten to mention that this is also available on Kindle if you're more into reading on ebooks. And if you do find yourself getting a copy of this, please take some time to make a review on the Amazon website. We'd really appreciate it. It's been a very helpful book to a lot of people, and I think it would be very helpful to a lot more people if they knew about it. So getting the word out would be great. Sokuzan will be in just a few minutes. We would like to thank you again, and also let you know that while I won't be up here bugging you anymore for another 6 months, that we still appreciate your ongoing donations and support, whether one-time donations or you could do reoccurring monthly donations, which can go through the website, sokukoji.org, and we have a PayPal button. You can also donate just straight through credit card or debit card, and you can also send checks to 33 Anderson Court, Battle Creek, Michigan 49017, made out to Sokukoji Buddhist Community. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. I'll turn it a little bit this way. Never mind. What was the title?
Grasp directly.
Grasp directly. Did I think of that? I had help. So just the word directly is without any filters, any screens, any intervention, any commentary, anything else, just directly. If you're doing something directly, you may not feel as confident about what you're doing, because the kind of confidence we usually look for is the relative kind, which gives us something to lean on, something to support, something's got our back. It's an odd kind of metaphor. It got your back. So if you really had my back, why would you get out here in front and help me? I don't need you back there. So the idea there, and that comes out of Koben, or not Koben, but out of the Dogen Genjokoan. So, pardon me again. So I think, didn't have a discussion with Dogen, 13th century is a long ways away. But it looks like what he's endeavoring to point out or suggest or recommend there is to whatever comes up, to see it directly, to grasp it or connect with it directly. So sometimes the word that is used as a commentary is that Trungpa Rinpoche used was first thought, best thought. Just a way of trying to help people relate to their consciousness and their awareness in such a way that they do it more directly. So there's a less of a chance of the discursive mind, the hope and fear mind, of getting in the way and masquerading as the truth. Grasp it directly. If you really are doing that, you really won't know what it is you're seeing initially. There's a big fill-in that comes in right afterwards that tells you this and tells you that, and it's this and it's that. And even that could be seen directly, grasped directly. The teaching, the way that seeing reality is described in the tradition is a direct perception of emptiness, direct perception of the fundamental nature of phenomena, including the self, including the other. To see it directly. And you might ask, how do you do that? How is that strengthened? How do we practice that? Since meditation is a practice, since the spiritual path is a practice, the way that is recommended primarily is to train your mind to see clearly. And that sitting practice of meditation, as we call it here, is shikantaza, or just precisely this, just as it is, just this. So when you sit down, your mind, your awareness can be flooded, filled with all kinds of ruminations and going this way, that way, thinking about this, thinking about that, worrying about what happened 10 minutes ago, or what you should have done, what you could have done. A much better way to spend your time than sitting on the floor looking at the wall. That shows up quite often. And so we're actually practicing seeing directly by sitting down and simplifying the situation. So we're just sitting still, using the body as a direct perception, a direct receiving. You're giving. You sit down and face the wall. The reason you have a wall is because it takes creates a situation where you're not only is your eyesight, your eyes are open, you're seeing something that stops right there. So you have some visual consciousness happening with very, very little content. and the content that you do have is very similar and is a metaphor for the way in which the mind blocks things out and prevents in the parts which are called walls of the mind. Very structures. Sometimes they show up as opinions, ideas, preconceptions, judgments, evaluations, and we don't even know they were there, because if you know something is there, then you see this is not real. This is kind of fake. This wall. So if you begin to be aware of it, it might sit there and be recognized as being unreal for quite a while before it starts to disintegrate, because you may be fueling it in some way that you're not aware of at first. People who are totally at the mercy of their opinions, their ideas, their walls of the mind, are not aware of them. Someone who's a meditator on the path begins to slowly, or even speedily, become more and more aware of the way in which they're avoiding, the way in which they shut down, the way in which they cover something up that they could actually see by grasping it directly, by covering it up with their ideas, their opinions, their feelings, their responses, their reactions. What is a reaction? There's something happens, it can be an action, and we react. So we even validate that in our conversation. Something happened, and you say, well, how do you react to that? Well, that's not the way to react. So we actually go in and validate the whole idea of reacting. So what you're actually saying, without knowing it, is samsara is valid, and the circularity of the mind is valid, and you just need to react in the right way. You need to do the right thing. Not that you shouldn't. So I'm not going to go the other way and say there's no right thing. It's always a middle way. It's always not too tight, not too loose. And sometimes through our confusion, sometimes we get swamped by our fear or by our hope, for that matter, to take us in a way that is it leads to further delusion, further confusion, further suffering for ourselves and others. Excuse me. Causes and conditions that arise in the mind stream are unpredictable and are uncontrollable and are untraceable. This is why the metaphor of tributary streams flowing in the darkness is a way of describing the karma that is coming at us, towards us, as us, that we impute as somebody. I'm somebody. I'm here. I had a good upbringing, had a great mom and dad, or I didn't have a great mom and dad, or I don't even know who they were because I was adopted. All the various things that we can bring into the mind stream to describe how we're feeling, why we're feeling this way, why we should, why we shouldn't, why it's okay that we do this, or why I'm this way. Why? If we come back to the theme of the Dharma talk, grasp directly, why is not grasping anything directly. Why is actually turning away from what is in front of you and settling for some kind of answer. It's circular. Not wrong. I'm not talking about right and wrong. It just goes in a circle because you'll get a because. Some form of, well, it's because of it's that time of year. It's that time of the day. Some kind of relative thing will come up to fill in and give the self-centeredness, the ego mind, temporary protection so it continue its masquerade as being a real. When the self-centeredness, the other-centeredness is seen through, we're not saying there isn't something still here, there isn't still a voice still happening, that there isn't some kind of locality, because there's a body mind here, but there's no solid being. A person that understands that may seem more solid than anybody else because they're not operating out of imaginary reference points or created or reference points invented on the basis of self-protection or self-advancement or hope and fear. What are they operating on? Whatever's arising. Whatever's arising. Not separate from this, not separate from the bird, not separate from the notes that you're taking here, which is a good idea, by the way. everybody that's not taking notes is wrong. How'd that feel? Everybody that's taking notes is right. Interesting thing about that is you can go back and at least if I, when I would take notes, I would go back and read my notes and not be able to understand what I wrote down. I don't write very clearly, and I always, what I hear and what I write down and what I read later are three different things. May need to do that, may not. Questions about that? Go ahead.
Is grasping directly the same as when you speak of perception only?
It's very similar. I wouldn't use the word grasp, but that's kind of what we came up with when we were talking about, because whoever translated, which Dogen translation was that?
Well, it's Tanahashi, but Tanahashi in Enlightenment Unfolds and Tanahashi in Moon in a Dewdrop says it two different ways. I could read the...
Yeah, go ahead.
So
We have permission from Dogen?
You can give him credit. All credit to Dogen.
Oh, credit
Okay.
Dogen. Okay. Credit Tanahashi.
So this is I'll read the one that I remember from
Yes.
Moon and Dewdrop, and then say it like it is here. When you see forms or hear sounds, fully engaging body and mind, you grasp things directly. That's Moon and a Dewdrop. And here it says, you intuit Dharma intimately.
Mm-hmm. So, it'd be interesting to, just short of getting into what's behind linguistics altogether, it'd be interesting to see what Japanese or Chinese words or whatever was translated out of the whole idea of intuit, or the whole idea of insight, and the idea of grasp. So,
Well, the next sentence probably colors
Go ahead.
in that more. Unlike things and their reflections in the mirror, and unlike the moon and its reflection in the water, when one side is illuminated, the other side is dark.
mm-hmm. That's why it's such a problem for ego. We don't want to be dark. We want everything to be lit up.
So our question was, in perception only or grasp directly? We talk about sounds and sights, but is it possible to directly perceive the idea of self or your personal narrative?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by personal narrative? Is it possible to see your ego, your self-centeredness, your assumption of a solid being? Is that what you're asking about?
More like, yeah, maybe, but more like the illusion of thinking. Illusion of a seam of a storyline.
So what's the question?
Can that be directly perceived?
Are you saying, can you directly perceive a storyline? I think so. More?
Like the story, even taking the illusion of how you look, your reflection in the mirror is always the reflection. You can't see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on in your mind, in a way, is a reflection of what's spontaneously arising. How do we directly perceive thinking?
So it's very difficult to see a thought. You can't see where the edge of it is, where the front edge, the middle, the end of it. But we use that kind of a metaphor to help us at least go in that direction. It's not so much the idea of doing something with the thinking, like it's more about the imputation or the belief that there's someone who thinks. Thinking is just an expression, just something that happens. It's just generated. Just like sounds are generated, sight, smells, taste, touch, thoughts. So it's very difficult to see some kind of isolated, independent thing that we call this is a thought. You can't find thoughts. If you look for thoughts, everything that we thought was thoughts go away because we're thinking. So the thinker can't really think itself.
This is what we struggle to figure out a way to ask this question. But another thing that we were talking about is in every moment there's so much sensory phenomena going on, including what's going on in the mind, or it appears. But it seems like by the time we see it in the mirror or the reflection, it's already a narrowed down, selective version of that. So is there a way to directly receive the bigger picture?
Yeah, practice not adding. Practice, I'll give you an example. You ready? This is blue. What happened in your mind when I said that? I showed you something that we conventionally call red. I said, this is blue. Did you argue with me? Because you thought I thought it was blue. You thought I was picking up the blue chant book.
I thought you were wrong.
Anybody else think I was wrong?
We're colorblind.
Or blind? So a simple idea, but what I'm pointing out is there's just hardly any gap at all between what we see and what we think about it. Or we immediately name it. And all I was doing is putting something up that you have another name for and telling you, it's just like I'm telling you the French word for red when I say this is blue. It's like I'm telling you something else, so, but it's an area that you can see right in your mind where the way the mind works to immediately grasp at a concept. Anybody have an experience in that little demonstration that is different than thinking I was wrong or immediately saying no, it's red? Did everyone say it's red? Did someone just not say anything or think anything? What did you do?
I felt it. It felt like my heart went like that.
That's because the heart's red. No, actually, books are red. Music is blue. Don't laugh too much. Any further question about that?
We were talking about how using the illusion of a movie, it's a bunch of different frames, but it looks like motion until the frames are really slowed down. And so when it's slowed down, you can see that there's jumping from one frame and thinking that there's a connection to the next, and it's locked down version. So that we were talking about perception in the realm. By the time it gets to the lockdown version, is there a
Ask
way
your
to-
question.
Can you see the locking down, or directly perceive the?
If you see it, it's gone. There's another, like the word, I've used the word recently, the word moment. You know, there aren't several moments. There's just this moment. One moment is not connected to another. There isn't anything but this moment. What we impute is a sense of past and future, based on the way we see things decay, or things fade, or things disappear. But it's always this. It's always, always. The grasping part of the mind is so incredibly gripping at life that when the body-mind does drop, there'll still be that gripping going on. Your consciousness will be disembodied. It's called a ghost. Find out what this is before that whole body-mind complex collapses. Go ahead. What?
Grasping indirectly.
Grappling?
Grasping indirectly. Never mind. It says, unlike things and the reflections in the mirror, and unlike the moon and its reflection in the water, when one side is illuminated, the other side is dark.
Give me the question.
So the illumination
Is dark. Unless it's a mirror, which is then it looks like something. Or unless it's the water, which then it looks like something. But the actuality is it's dark.
So what is the side that's illuminated?
The side is not dark.
So are you the illumination?
Get smart with me. You should be able to come out of that slump.
If you can't see yourself, if you're looking at yourself as a reflection, and you are the illumination that you can never see.
No, too complicated. Too philosophical, too existential.
Well, then there's nothing to say.
Okay.
Not a question for me, if it's any consolation.
Okay.
Greg B asks, "Hi, I have a question, please. Is spontaneous action the same as grasping directly, and how does that fit in with just observing? That is, can not hooking up your vocal cords be the same as grasping directly?"
It could be. There might not be any movement at all to really perceive or see what something fundamentally is. So not hooking up your vocal cords or your muscles or something like that is just a way of saying just experience the leading edge of the feeling, the anger, the frustration, the anxiety, the feeling of whatever the feeling may be, without abandoning it by going into an expression of it. So this is most, not all, but artists try to have a inspiration, and then they actually abandon quite often they abandon the inspiration, and try to express it. And of course, that's when we get really bad art. But when they actually don't abandon the inspiration, and the expression comes out of the inspiration or out of that emptiness, then we have something that's truly aligned with the balance that is in the universe, that comes out of a flower, out of clouds, out of mountains and rivers and so on. But the person who does that will often say, I don't feel like I even did it. It just came through me. So that's a difficult area. But it takes some artists, musicians, painters, poets, writers, anyone who's creating anything. It might take them their whole life to kind of get out of the way, so the you could say the universe can actually speak through them in their particular medium. I know in my humble case, I know that if I'm trying to throw a wad of paper in a wastebasket, that's my example, it works better if I close my eyes. I don't have good luck directing anything. The wad of paper or whatever it may be always hits the edge, which means that I hit the rim of whatever it is and then it falls out. Never goes in, unless I close my eyes.
You used the example of the wall being a metaphor for the walls of our mind, and it seems like there was a couple of different areas where someone that doesn't practice doesn't know they have the walls of the mind, and then when we practice we see that we have walls and ways we shut down. Is there something past seeing that we have the walls?
Well, there could be. It could be the way where we keep refueling the whole thing. We keep rebuilding the wall based on thinking, or based on trying to get rid of the wall. We put up another wall. We take that wall down, then we put up the wall that shows how much we've accomplished by taking on that wall. This is quite often what happens, and don't misunderstand. I'm not taking away anything from psychotherapy or any kind of therapy, but I think sometimes that happens, and that where we go into it with an attitude of manipulating the mind stream in such a way, and we might have some success, but probably isn't going to last because it's about rearranging the furniture. Yes.
If we watch the fuel lines, and is there something that will show up behind the wall if it's not fueled anymore?
Yeah, just open. This is just open. Things may show up, they may not show up, but you're not separate from anything, no matter what's happening. At some point, it may look like total darkness. You're not separate. It may look like a complete flooding of everything with light. Not separate. Polarity is gone. You can't find something else. It's always this. It may look like 50 things, or 23 things, or it may look like a bunch of good things and a bunch of bad things. It can show up anyway. That's why it's so difficult, is because we keep believing the story or disbelieving the story. Do nothing with it. Shoka.
From the book that Kozan was reading from, they talk about fully engaging body and mind. What's dark when we're fully engaging?
I think the relative understanding or relative truth area starts to lose its light and shadow. It starts to lose its definition. You could call it dark. More?
Sheldon has a question.
Sheldon.
He says, I missed the first part of your talk, so you may have already answered this. I'm wondering if grasping directly is another way of saying don't add. How would we know if we were grasping directly?
So I think initially when one begins to understand what that is the feeling that tends to come up that's really easy to buy into is we're not getting anywhere, or we're failing, or we don't understand. If you're looking at something that you actually don't understand and you add on, I don't understand, this is what happens to that aspect of the awareness that possibly could understand in a deep way, maybe beyond speech, beyond language. I don't understand. As soon as you say that, you've just given a mini lecture to your self-centeredness, to your ego, that goes by the touchstone of the word I. I don't understand. So, and it's very slight and it's very subtle, but it's just a way of continually to not be willing to go into that open space. Kozan.
Can how it appears, can knowing how it appears and not knowing what it is, happen at the same time?
You're talking about the 30 verses, that kind
Could be.
of, how it appears, in
Yeah,
that
could,
which-
could knowing
how it
what
appears.
how it appears or what it looks like.
What it looks like is what you think it is. That's what we did with the red and blue.
Can you know what it looks like and not know what it is at the same time?
Well, yeah, you can, but that's just knowing what something is and not knowing that's just a relative situation. What it fundamentally is the perfected nature, but you won't be able to see that unless you work with the difficulty with that, or the sidetracks of going into ideas and opinions and additions and subtractions about whatever is there. So the constant state of you say it.
Constant state of not being found, of how it appears, and that which appears can be known as the fulfilled because of its state of non-otherness.
Yeah, so a non-other means there isn't anything else. So there is no, it doesn't say there, it's not saying there aren't other human beings and bodies and trees and skies and cloud, but the understanding is that the actual seeing of this, the direct seeing of this, is you don't see something else. We have a lot of time left. Yes.
On the path, is fear a mark of something that we need to go into?
So I would say, basically, I would say yes, but I would say that's going to be different with each person. And you know, if the fear gets, if you're really having a lot of difficulty, then you know we're not trying to push this and kind of create some kind of explosion or something. You might want to take a break, go for a walk, do something else. So it's taken me a while to understand it, but the way I teach this is basically it's a traditional teaching: not too tight, not too loose. So not so tight that we make ourselves force the issue. So go into the fear, but when it gets really intense, go do something else. Step away from it for a while. More specifically about that?
If we personally have an ability to move in an area other people have some fear in, I think for like one thing, like going in and doing the office,
Mm-hmm.
I don't seem to put up too much of a resistance with it, but sometimes there can be what I perceive as resistance or getting help with that, or people
Mm-hmm.
how best to relate to people that don't
Right.
have the same relationship to
They're
area
just-
I have ease with.
Well, they're just stingy. You're generous, and they aren't. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding. Let me have it. I mean, I don't sense that you're coming up with that. That's just being funny about it. But just meet people where they're at, and some people don't want to do that. They don't want to. I would like everybody to, as I was talking earlier to Danny about, I would like people to come here and stay here, but I have to respect their wanting to go do something else. So doesn't make them wrong to be here for a while and then leave. They need to do something else. Have to meet people where they're at. It's very difficult to help someone if you have ideas about how people should act or feel or something. and you're imposing that on them on some way, either through actually saying something or actually just kind of buying that or believing that. That being said, feeling that having a feeling come up of feeling like someone isn't pulling their share of the load or something like that, if that's where you're headed with that. Is that what you mean?
It seems to be something I add
Yeah.
on to it.
Yeah, so I would say if you feel that way, don't do anything with that. Don't correct something so that you aren't that kind of a person who does that kind of thing. So it's a very subtle area, especially after we start doing sitting meditation practice. We find that awareness practice is we very much can try to create start to create a self that's more aware, more balanced, more fair, more understanding. Go ahead.
Is feeling that, to use that example, that someone might be not pulling their weight, is that covering up seeing how they need to do that?
It could be if you because we have no idea why people are functioning the way they're functioning. They don't even know. People don't really know where all this is coming from. The emotions, feelings, ideas, and sometimes that confusion gets strong enough that they just create a bunch of opinions and ideas and structures and beliefs and projections that help the self-centeredness, which is also a projection, feel secure. Nothing is more secure around a projection of me than a bunch of ideas and opinions and everything that insulate you from the world that is constantly unpredictable. When I say unpredictable, we don't know what's going to happen next at all. As it says in the four reminders, death comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. Death, the ending of your physical situation and mine that we're so enamored of, or not, quite often comes without any warning at all, and we're just gone from this particular bardo. Yes?
Is there no way of knowing what help looks like?
What's your context?
It seems like I have an idea of what help looks like for me, so it must mean that it looks like that for other people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, may not be. Maybe a different situation. Some people don't need what you need. Some people need another kind of caring or protection or support. So you just need to have me insult you a lot. Yeah, keep stitching. And of course, the idea there is to fundamentally help somebody, and it may show up as a kind of an insult, but it's if someone is actually practicing and is ready to receive that as a teaching, then it's not that difficult. That whole metaphor for it might have had its place in earlier centuries. I don't know how strong it is these days. Insulting someone to teach them.
A question from Bhaskar in Houston.
Yes, Bhaskar.
It's kind of two parts. Is direct grasping only possible during sitting meditation, or is it possible off the cushion, like, say, being fully absorbed in music, a form of direct grasping?
So yes, music is a good because it's sound, and because you're it's art, because you're taking all of the mind stream, and you're bringing it into the receiving of sounds that have been arranged in a certain way. This is why we, depending on how you receive that, you may be able to listen to Mozart and be delighted, and you may be listen to Mozart and be bored. You may have to listen to, metal music, something like that. Isn't that what you like? Metal. So, and that it's just a way of getting rid of your aggression, right? Oh, I like the shrug. So, but I would say, yeah, to Bhaskar's question, I would say, yes, there's something to that, because But the interesting thing is do that with the world. See that everything is completely balanced and is musical all the time, everywhere. Everything is totally, completely fulfilled. So this art gives us, it's been said way before I got here, that if you look at a painting by Picasso, you have to spend some time with it because he was an extremely sophisticated and dedicated balancer of colors and shapes and lines. And he spent his whole life, when he was very young, he was painting 3 paintings a day back in when he was in his early 20s. And not selling them, just painting and painting and painting. But if you go and sit in front of one of his paintings for any length of time, you will eventually see the whole universe show up in that. Just like if you listen to music, I mean, whatever listen to the Four Seasons, not those guys, Vivaldi. But listen to that, and you get a feeling for a musical sound expression of the fundamental nature of balance, when things are totally balanced. That's why we love music. You call it kind of an escape. But actually, if you listen to music and then bring that same appreciation, which all appreciation is giving anything that is there the space to be what it is. So sometimes we think that's knowing what music means or something like that. Music doesn't mean anything. You can't say that this kind of music or that kind of music means something. Sometimes you can listen to music and if there are words to it, you have no idea what the words mean, but it carries some kind of intense or strongly felt situation. So you could bring that into your life. Try to see everything, the colors, shapes, smells, tastes, textures. This is someone who is a meditator actually becomes someone who not only is an artist, or not only someone who is always balancing what is in front of them. This doesn't mean that they're deliberately going in and pushing this down or pulling that up necessarily, but a deep appreciation of everything that's happening, including the negativity. You can't exclude the feeling and just grasp the high, uplifted rainbows and unicorns. So Bhaskar, what kind of music? Grateful Dead. Not Grateful Dead. No. Shostakovich. Yes.
Is there a fear that isn't just mental construction?
Well, I can't know everything, obviously, but I would say it's probably a mental construction of some kind of a constructed thing where something is threatened and something else is threatening. And so some kind of a belief or assumption or grasping at some kind of polarity that needs to be run away from or destroyed. Passion, aggression, ignorance, ignoring it, getting out here, distracting ourselves. If it's ephemeral, then we'll distract ourselves into, let's go do something. I got to get out of here. I'm going to go for a walk. I can't take this anymore. So there's some kind of a construction going on, yes. And then and that seems to happen in different ways. It might be a little story about it, and then we'll add on to the story about why parts of it are true and what some other part is not really sure about that part, but it's probably that way. So, more? Good question. Kyun?
Hopelessness, is this grasping directly?
The way I talk about hopelessness is to just give in to the feeling of not getting anywhere. So as a kind of just let it be that way. And at some point, there's no concern about you're not wanting something else. So there's no particular hope, which is not a negative feeling. So, but you're more likely to see what's in front of you in its rawness, in its simplicity, if the mind isn't always being flooded with some kind of hope for something else, or if this needs to be different. This is fine, but I'd like it to be this way or that way. So you go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Is it earlier you said something about dark?
Yes.
Is it dark also?
I think the path quality of it is that way. But the fruition is neither dark nor light. Fruition is not two, so it isn't something. It has no phenomenological quality to it. It's not something as opposed to something else. But the path, the ground is the suffering and the confusion and the difficulty. We stumble into this or come into this this path of the spiritual path of working with the awareness. Happens to be, in this case, happens to be called Buddhism, Buddha Dharma, but truth is not doesn't just belong to Buddha Dharma. It's just an extremely good way of understanding it or seeing it. More?
And when death comes, I will be helpless. At that point, is there no choice but to grasp directly?
That would be an interesting thing. Let me know what happens. And I could speculate a little bit about it, but I would say that each person's, when the body-mind does go away, that's a whole bardo area that we've talked about before. There's a whole area of the dissolution of them. When there's a traditional way of talking about it. The fire goes into water, water goes into earth, and earth goes into air. Some kind of way of talking about it. So that there's probably a breakdown that we would, if you're open. I mean, if you really want to see what this is, then your curiosity will follow you right into that situation, even though you're going through a transition that is completely unknown. There's no way to know what that's about. So hopeless could show up there. If you practice working with that, wanting things to be different, and just watching how we do that, then there's a possibility you might be willing to just be there and be with what's happening. So, as the tradition says, when the clear blue light of the void shows up, you go towards it instead of running away from it. Just a way of talking about it. We have no idea what's going to happen. Nobody does. Even that one guy who wrote the big book. What's his name? That's a leading question. Yes.
Eric from Delaware has a quick question for you.
Which Eric is in Delaware?
Wilson.
Oh, okay.
He says, grasping directly sounds redundant. How else can you grasp? Am I missing something? Not trying to get smart, genuinely want to clarify. Thanks.
Okay, so, let's say it this way. Let's set aside the grasp idea and say just receive. Just whatever shows up, just directly give it your attention. And if you really give it your attention, you won't know what it is. You won't name it. You won't call red blue. You won't call blue red. You won't even have an idea of color, or right or wrong, or up or down, or back or forth, or existent or non-existent. So the whole idea of using the word grasp, which, as I said earlier, I don't know what that's translated out of, but Dogen uses, or the translator Tanahashi uses that, and I'm not taking issue with that. I'm just saying that a grasp might mean just to perceive something a certain way, just to perceive it, just to receive that. You're grasping that in some way. You could say that we're sitting here and Senchu just came in the door and walked over here. So in a sense, even though I wasn't looking directly at her, my attention was kind of grasping at her coming in. And so there's a little bit of that. Or you could say it the other way around, say just perceiving that and receiving. What did I add on? I add on, Rumi's probably sleeping. That's why she's able to come in. Yes?
Boster says, I listen to South Indian classical music.
Oh.
Thank you.
South Indian classical music. Near Bangalore? Yes.
If there isn't an end to adding, how can we see what we're covering up?
Paraphrase that. Say it a different way.
if we're always imputing something, then what is there to be seen beyond it?
So what seems to happen by just continuing practicing and continuing just through repetition of looking at it, and endeavoring to not invent things or run away from it, ignorance, or run to it, passion, or obliterate it, aggression, but it's just there. And so by just looking at that imputation or that belief or that automatic response to it, just look at it. And don't tighten it up, and don't loosen it up, and don't look away, don't do anything with it. And so what is to be seen is ultimate nature, Buddha nature. Paramartha Satya is a fancy Indian word, comes out of ancient Indian philosophy. Just the ultimate nature of things it doesn't come and go. And our mind, if you look at just reflect on the way the mind is. Find anything in this room, anything you see anywhere, or through any of the six sense fields, including your mind, that is anything like a thought. Where does the thought arise at? For something to be there, if we attribute some kind of ontological status to a thought, it's something. It's my thought, and it's a thought about the sound of a cardinal. So it's a thought, or it's a memory that I'm bringing back. So there's a space around that, you could say, or it has to have some kind of space to it arise in. If it doesn't have the space to arise in, then it can't appear. And your identity, if I may be so bold to point it out to you, is that space. And yet it's not the space when the sound of the cardinal is not there. Go ahead. I saw your eyebrow twitch, so that must mean there's a thought coming in that is like, ask Sokuzan this. No?
I was just bewildered. I don't even know. I don't remember what you said now.
Bewitched, bothered, and bewildered?
Yeah.
Isn't that a song? You don't remember what I said? That's a
Said
good
something
song.
about a cardinal, or the space in which the cardinal's
Sound.
sound appears is not there when it doesn't happen.
No, I say that the space arises with the phenomena. The phenomena isn't just there all the time, and that comes along. This arises when you wake up in the morning. It isn't there when you're not here. You could say, well, yeah, it is. Well, maybe. It's called a cosmic joke. Further question?
Greg has another question.
Greg?
Post-meditation, how do we set fair boundaries in a healthy, assertive way when others may be speeding along, imposing their view of the world on others?
Yeah, just receive, just listen to them. Just listen, just receive what they're saying. Give them just enough feedback so they don't go turn your lack of response into some kind of warfare or some kind of condescension or some kind of judgment. So when they're speeding along, if they require some activity, I understand. I see what you're saying. Even though you don't see what they're saying particularly, but you see that if you look at someone closely, you'll see that most people are coming out of their suffering. Most people are trying to tell you things so that you'll agree. You get sucked into a conversation about things. People like to discuss things and argue sometimes. So just let them come and go. And if somebody gets really difficult, then say, excuse me, I've got to go. Got something else happening here. Don't hang around and torture yourself trying to be receptive or nice or kind or hospitable to someone who has intense aggression. Take a little bit. Don't fight back, and then go to your next appointment. So a little bit. But it doesn't seem to work to have conversations or have even communication or discussions with people who are so shut down and they're just so locked into their own opinions. They just want to fight. with you. And someone who is really intelligent will, might put you in your place unless you're really clear about this. So I would say get clear. Get very clear. Have an understanding of what the thought process, what the thinking process, and what logic is all about, so you know what it is. And that way, when you run into YouTube personalities, however you want to call them, that have something to sell, something to buy, something to something, and take positions on everything. And this includes meditation teachers. Includes all kinds of people. When somebody's trying to promote something or trying to get you to do something, suspicious. And what you can do there is just receive. The most misunderstood form and ignored form of generosity is to give. Give your attention to everything and everybody. People want to be heard. They want you to listen to them, and so can be very kind and maybe the most helpful thing you can do is to listen to someone who is full of themselves. Which doesn't mean agree. They'll notice that you're not agreeing and might even ask you, so what do you think about what I'm thinking? And if it looks like they're serious, it looks like they've actually got it on receive for 30 seconds, you can just say, I think you're wrong. You can say that, but we just need to listen so carefully that we can see if there is some kind of an opening, or if someone really does want to know how it looks to you, say, I think you're confused. And then they may open up further. How do you mean? And then you could take it further than that. But you aren't going to find many people, unless they're people who are training their mind to be open, training their mind to see clearly, training their mind to see beyond their enculturation, their beliefs, their opinions, their hopes, their fears, and the whole cultural thing that's being spread all over the map all the time by the news media, by YouTube, by Facebook. Thank you very much.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our red chant books. And reminding everybody about the donation boxes in the hallway and thanking everyone who has supported our fundraising efforts and continues to do so. We can't do this without you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Directions of the three worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.